We're taking time in our studio again to connect to the Northwest Local School District. And so we have in our studio the Superintendent of Schools, Darrell, and we have the CFO Treasurer, Amy Wells. Thank you so much for coming in. Because today we want to make sure we help the community understand how you look at the financial health of the district and what are the details of the bond issue and things like that. So we want to make sure that everyone who's looking at that information can understand it and see how it works. So Amy, I want to start with you. Can you explain how the district measures financial stability?
Yes, so as part of our strategic plan, the district has 5 pillars, and financial stability is one of them. And so we want to make sure our community understands how we are funded and how we utilize those resources, and so that we can maintain fiscal stability going forward. And our board has a resolution, which is a community partnership, which says we will not increase our expenses by more than 3% from year to year. We also maintain a 60-day cash reserve similar to like a personal savings account, so that we can make sure that we can pay for summer payrolls that our staff has already earned, that we still owe them, invoices that come in, unfunded mandates, downturns in the economy, things that would happen. Then we also, in November of 19 was our last operating levy, and that was a large levy that our community asked us to come back more often with smaller levies. And so we have a 5-year operating levy cycle. So we're always looking out for 5 years to determine when that next levy cycle needs to be.
I like that because that involves hearing feedback from the community, and the community said, you know, these big jumps, that's hard. Maybe could you bring it back in smaller increments? So that's just exactly what you're doing, is measuring that, and so that you don't have to come to them back with a very big jump.
Right, and in 19, we projected that next levy would be in fiscal 24, which would be November of 23. Okay. However, we've been able to extend that out until fiscal year 28 at this point.
Oh, that's great. So how do you decide what benchmarks you have to look at when you're putting this together?
So as a school district, we want to make sure that we're spending at least 70% on education and instruction, because that is what we do. That's our core mission and vision of what we do as a district, and no more than 10% on administration. That's not only central support offices, but also our building and department offices as well. Last year, we spent 73% on instruction, so more than the 70%, and 7% on administration, so less than the 10%, and the other 20% is on operations. So that would be transportation, custodial maintenance, utilities, things like that. We also set our budgets based on class size targets. Departments and buildings also have staffing allocations, as well as for things like utilities and even custodial cleaning is all based on square feet. So we have benchmarks and targets that we use to develop our budgets and also to track our expenses.
Can you explain where the funding comes from to fund the school district?
Yes. So the state of Ohio does a biennial budget every 2 years, and currently they're actually working on the one that would become effective in July 1. But right now we're funded under the Fair School Funding Formula, which is developed by the state of Ohio. They determine the cost for basic education. They also determine what a local community's capacity to fund public education could be. Right now, they consider Northwest Local School District a wealthy suburban school district and require our community to fund 75% of basic education and 100% of anything above basic education, which leaves 25% for the state to fund on basic education. However, they've decided that they can't fund their 25%, so they're phasing that in, and it's currently funded at 33% of the 25% that they're required to pay.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So that number, the longer you talked about where that comes from, the smaller the piece of the pie of the funding that you're actually getting from the state.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So in addition to 100% of above basic education, it's also 100% for anything infrastructure or maintenance. So buildings are required to be 100% locally funded. The way we are funded is through either the state through the formula or locally through property taxes or income taxes. To date, our school district has only had property taxes, but which are flat when passed. So that requires us to continually come back to our community for increases in revenue, because the amount we receive when a levy is passed by our community is the same amount that we receive every year after. And then the other option is an income tax, which as we currently do not have, but is an option for our community. There are two types of income taxes. One is a full income tax and one is an earned income tax. A full income tax is just like right off of your 1040, a percentage tax on the full of all earnings, and an earned income tax is only on W-2 wages. So it does not tax retirement income nor interest income. And with 40% of our community age 65 or older, we're looking to our community to let us know what direction we should pursue going forward.
Okay, so that's great. That's another place where you're looking for input. And we know we can't expect a big piece of this pie to come from the state, at least the way it's set up right now. Like you said, right now, there's another budget bill on the table. But so the question will come up. There needs to be funds. And so the community can let you know, we'd prefer it to be from here or not from there. Sort of. But there has to be a there. There does have to be a someplace.
There are only a limited number of options we have. And so for the operating funds, it's really whether the community would like for it to continue to be on property taxes or whether they would like us to consider an income tax, including the earned income.
And operating expenses is the key here. This is the funding for the regular day-to-day use of the district.
Correct.
This is
So operational levies are for salaries, benefits, supplies, utilities, and being a service organization, 80% of our operational costs is salaries and benefits. It's in people.
Yeah. And those are the people that make it such a great district.
Yes.
Now, in addition to these levy options we've talked about, we're also looking at a bond issue. Can you explain what that can fund?
Yes, so a bond issue is different than operational levies. Bond issue is for brick and mortar, and a bond issue goes away when the bonds are paid off. So similar to like a mortgage, where an operating levy is continuous and continues to be paid year after year.
Okay, that's really helpful to understand how the bond issue funds differently than the levies. Darrell, can you tell us more about the bond issue?
Yeah, so actually, although there's a bond issue on the ballot now, this has actually been in the works for years. Back in 2009, our committee came together with community members, parents, staff, and really looked at our facility needs long-term. And that initial process in 2009 really put together our master facility plan, and we're working the plan now. So back then, we really looked at the needs of the entire district, prioritized where to start, and looked at all of the assessments from the state when they come in and look at the needs of our buildings. And based on the assessments from the state, every single building in our district, except for our 3 new buildings and Montford Heights, are slated for replacement and not renovation based on the conditions of the buildings. So the needs of our district have not changed. They've actually continued to get worse over time, which is why it's been so important that we continue to work through the plan and make sure that we realize the benefit of the plan for the entire district.
That's important because people might be inclined to say something like, well, you haven't needed this before, and that is not true. You have needed it before, and the conditions of the older buildings continue to be less and less able to be supported. There gets to be a point where a building can't be updated anymore. And they have to be safe for learning.
Yeah, so we actually have great needs in our district around our facilities. And when you think about the variety of facilities we have Corn Elementary that turns 100 years old this year. And even our technically newer buildings that are slated for replacement are Pleasant Run Middles, our high schools. Those are all slated for replacement because the cost to renovate them up to the standards they need to be would outweigh the cost to actually replace the building.
So can you give us a cost breakdown for this bond issue?
Yeah, so currently we have phase 2 on the ballot. Phase 2 actually completes our middle school and our elementary buildings. So there would be a new Colerain Elementary. We would renovate Montford Heights, and we would replace our current 3 middle schools with 2 larger brand new middle schools. And the reason that's important is our elementaries, currently our students have very disparate experiences if you're in a 100-year-old building versus a Taylor, Struble, or Pleasant Run Elementary that is built in 2015. So we really want to make sure that all of our elementary students have comparable experiences. And our middle schools, all 3 buildings are over 100% capacity. And so we don't have space or room in our building in order to continue to grow and even accommodate the students we have now.
And I think it's important that the phases that you mentioned. This is phase 2. You're not trying to do the entire district all at the same time. That would be too hard and financially difficult. But you have this broken down. And right now we're looking at the priorities for phase 2.
Yeah, so this is phase 2. Phase 1 was our 3 new elementaries. And that's a great question about why phasing, because we really are focused on doing this in a way that is cost effective for our community and really maximizes any of the available dollars we have from the state. As Amy mentioned, the state does not give us any funding for our buildings. There is, however, a program in the state of Ohio through the Ohio School Facilities Commission. That program started about 30 years ago or so, and they're really focused on rebuilding schools across the state of Ohio, starting with the poorest district, where they paid 100% to replace the buildings, through the wealthiest district, where they will pay 0 on that sliding scale. As Amy mentioned, the state views our district as a wealthy district. And so they haven't gotten to us yet, but they're close. And so when the state gets to our district in their list, they will co-fund a project in our district. However, as we approach that timing, we're able to be in that program in order to earn credits so that we can cash in down the road. So currently, phase 1, we were able to build $16 million in credits based on building Pleasant Run Elementary, Taylor Elementary, and Struble Elementary. Phase 2, we would continue to be in that program where we could earn credits. And so in phase 2, we would earn about $40 million in credits. When we get to phase 3, which is our high school phase, we will be able to cash in the credits from phase 1, the credits from phase 2. The state will kick in their co-funded 25%. Our community then only has to pay the difference. So it makes it the most cost-effective way to address all of our facility needs district-wide and really benefit the community.
That's great because, again, people might say, well, why don't we wait? Do we need to wait? And this means we can be in line and stay in the queue, if we want to be British, if we could stay in the queue for our chance to get that state funding. But meanwhile, we don't have to let the buildings get worse and worse and worse. They can be worked on, and you can earn the credits that can be cashed in later. That's great.
And the timing is really important because we have great needs as a district. Right now, we have $40 million of maintenance that needs to be taken care of right now. And those are things that are not currently being addressed. We're patching, we're repairing, we're maintaining. But there are significant needs. And the cost that we kind of weigh is Corwin Elementary, for example. If a roof were to go on that building and we had to replace that entire roof, it's one, a significant amount of money that we don't have on hand right now. And two, when we replace that, the community pays 100% for that roof. When we replace the building, the community pays 100% for that new roof as well. And because it's so new, we lose the credits. So the community then pays 200% for a roof versus replacing the building now before a major structural thing happens. And we get the credit for the state, and the community pays 75% for a roof.
I feel like that anyone who either owns a home or owns a car or anything that gets these big maintenance moments understands the idea of deferring your maintenance forever and how much that can cost you later. And this is that on a very big scale. And with lots of other people being part of that too. Like you said, the community pays for those things. So let's pay for one roof for the Coleraine Elementary kids instead of two because one broke or something like that, yeah.
And the community has asked us the question about the payment schedule because the bond is out there for 4.98 mils.
Okay.
And it is for 38 years. And we've had people ask the question, why 38 years? When I can pay my mortgage off in half that amount of time, why can't you? And public utilities are very different than private residences.
Okay.
And so the way we structure the schools and the township finances is to really structure that payment over the life of the building. That way, everyone who is using that building over the life of the building is actually paying a little bit for that use versus everyone now paying an inordinate amount so that people down the road pay nothing. So we structure that as a way to really spread that payment out over the usage of the building.
I like that. I like that. So what are some of the, we talked about equity, about the kids from Coleraine Elementary have the same opportunities as the kid from Taylor. What are some other priorities that are part of phase 2?
So one of the things that really came out of our community group was this idea of a clean feeder program where students matriculate up through our system and stay together as a cohort.
Okay.
Currently, that doesn't happen with our students from Taylor. They're split between Pleasant Run Middle School and Coleraine Middle School. This would really create that clean feeder program. It also addresses that overcrowding piece. We currently have one of the nurses in one of our middle schools who is operating her office out of a locker room because we just don't have any more space. And so, that overcrowding is a major issue that we're trying to address as well as just the aging facilities and the maintenance needs and the way to be cost effective to really benefit the community in the long run.
Yeah, and of course, we all know that newer buildings cost a lot less operationally to maintain and to run, and you don't have as much patching that you constantly have to do.
Well, and when we talk about newer buildings, it's not just about the operational efficiencies, but when you think about a building built in 1923 versus 2023, the safety features are huge when we think about how we can really maintain safety and security of an environment with a new building versus an old building.
Yeah, they were not designed to do the same things we need a school to do right now.
Right.
And the classrooms need to be able to do different things. I know I've talked to people that are putting technology in their classrooms and they literally don't have enough places to plug it in.
Trying to get Wi-Fi through the walls of Coleraine Elementary and Coleraine Middle that were built as bomb shelters can be a challenge.
I can imagine. And we bump into those things at Waycross when we're streaming out sometimes that, gosh, those are solid, but not where we want them to be. So what are some other, we talked a little bit about the difference between a bond levy and an operating levy. I feel like it's something that we can't explain it too many times because we see them so often. Can you explain that again?
So yeah, currently we have a bond issue on the ballot, and bond issues can only go for the building of bricks and mortar. So this goes to our buildings. And so it is based on a property tax, but as Amy mentioned earlier, that bond is only there for the duration of that. So once it's paid off, we don't continue to get revenue from that.
So tell me what some of the specific maintenance issues that you're looking at here.
So one clear example that I can point out is this last summer, we actually had at Coleraine Middle, over the very front door of the building, the parapet, the bricks that are over that door are pulling away from the building. We actually had to spend money this summer to reattach the bricks to the building before they fell, so we didn't have to close the entrance to the building and bring people in through a different space. So these are the kinds of things that we are trying to mitigate in order to get to the new building to really work the plan and make this a cost-effective plan for the community.
So when we're looking at all of these projects, some folks may want to ask, are there other options that you could be looking at?
So the reason we have the phase plan is because our community group has really come together and worked with us to say this is the most cost-effective way for the community. We only have a certain number of options. The district has a debt limit that is established by the Ohio Revised Code. And we currently don't have enough space in our debt limit to address the needs of the community. And that debt limit does not mean that Amy can walk into a bank and sign a note to get $40 million. It means that we would still have to come back to the community and ask for a bond issue in order just to repair. And we don't have the capacity to really come back and just do the repairs or even the replacement unless we're in a state program. And that's why the timing is so important, because we are currently in the state program and we're trying to maximize our ability to rebuild the entire district based on need before we get to the end of that state program and lose our opportunities.
Can you explain what that debt limit means more specifically?
Yeah, currently, based on the state law, we have about 82 million that we're able to borrow, which would include going to the voters for a bond issue. We currently have $40 million in deferred maintenance. That $40 million does not include Coleraine L and Coleraine Middle because of the state of the buildings. In order to take care of all of the repair work and replace those two buildings, it would be over 120 million. So there's not enough room in the debt limit to allow that to happen. And the state would not permit us to just repair buildings. that based on their standard need to be replaced. So we don't have some of the options that people have asked us to consider because of some of those requirements from the state.
Can you explain to me what's different about how a school approaches this versus how a private individual would approach this?
Yes, if you think about a private residence, most private residences have one person for about every 500 square feet. Our buildings have about one person for every 100 square feet. So when you think about that, the wear and tear on a public utility in a public building is much different than a private. When you think about the fact that in our large elementaries, we have almost 800 to 850 students. That's a lot of times we're flushing toilets throughout the day compared to a private residence. The wear and tear is very different. And when you think about that, our buildings like Colerain Elementary, Colerain Middle, the bathroom facilities are very different. Like Colerain Middle School has one facility for girls, one restroom for boys in the entire building for 600 kids. Very different than private residences. So the wear and tear is very different, which is why our buildings are used differently. It would be comparable to someone having a house party with about 20 people in their house every day.
Yeah, that would be a lot of wear. I'm still not past the one boys and one girls restroom for 600. You can't tell me that there's not some more need in there. Yeah.
We have the need.
Yeah, that is definitely that. I feel like that of all the statistics, we've had a lot of statistics here today, but I feel like that one should stick with you a little bit. And yeah, the amount of flushes per day I just can't imagine the wear on, that's just infrastructure of your building. Is there anything else you want to make sure that the community knows about these programs, about what you're doing at the school district?
It's a lot of information, and we've tried to really condense it in a way that is digestible, but we also have a lot of information on our website. So I encourage people to go visit our website, nwlsd.org, and at the upper left-hand corner of the homepage, there's a red button for building our facilities. That has a lot more information, and people can take their time and really sift through that. And then they can always reach out to Amy, myself, or anyone else for additional questions, because we want to make sure that everyone really understands the bond issue that's in front of them so they make the most informed choice.
Yeah, I think that's really important because we went very quickly through a whole lot of information here, and we put a whole lot of numbers out in front of people. If you want more time to look at those and see what they go with, definitely go to the website because it's all broken down there. There's so much more information there than what we were able to just now cover here in the studio. I want to thank both of you for coming in. This will hopefully really help the residents connect to the school district and get information from the source. If anybody's watching this and they have questions, make sure you go to those sources. Make sure you ask people in the district to answer the things that you're not sure about. It's really easy to sort of guess when you're looking at something like a bond issue, not really knowing what it means. Don't guess. They're happy to tell you, and that's why we're here right now, right?
Thank you for the time.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching, because that means you want to make sure you're connected to the Northwest Local School District.